You can be brilliant at your job and still feel terrified by your bank account. I've seen surgeons with maxed out credit cards and engineers on six figures who panic over a 500 repair. Why? Because financial anxiety isn't about intelligence. It's about a blind spot almost every smart person shares. We've built this weird mythology around money and intelligence. Like somehow, if you're smart enough to become a surgeon or design software or argue a case in court, you should automatically know how to manage your finances. But that's not how it works. Because making good money decisions isn't about IQ. It's not about how many degrees you have or how well you did in school. It's about psychology. It's about emotion. It's about the stories you tell yourself when nobody's watching. And here's what nobody talks about: smart people often have more psychological blind spots when it comes to money, not fewer. Let me explain what I mean. When you've spent your whole life being the smartest person in the room, something happens to your brain. You start trusting your gut a little too much. You start believing that if you understand one complex thing, you can figure out everything else just as easily. I call this the confidence trap. Think about it. You spent years mastering something difficult: medicine, law, engineering, whatever. You worked hard, you earned respect. And now, when you look at your bank account or your investment options, part of you thinks, how hard could this be? I figured out organic chemistry. I can figure out a Roth IRA, and that confidence, that same quality that helped you succeed in your career, becomes the thing that sabotages you with money. Because here's the truth: money isn't like passing an exam. There's no syllabus. There's no right answer you can memorize. It's messy and emotional and tied to every insecurity you've ever had about worth and safety and control. Smart people hate that. They hate ambiguity. They hate not knowing. So instead of admitting they need help or need to learn, they wing it. They trust their instincts, and their instincts, which work great in their professional life, completely fail them when it comes to finances. I see this all the time with investing. Someone makes decent money, finally has some cash to invest, and they start reading articles or watching videos or talking to that one friend who made money on crypto. And because they're smart, they think they can outsmart the market. They think they can pick the winning stocks. They read about Tesla or Nvidia or whatever's trending, and they convince themselves they've done the research. They've analyzed the data. They know something other people don't. But what they're really doing is telling themselves a story where they're the hero who saw the opportunity everyone else missed, a story where their intelligence gives them an edge. And that story feels so good, so validating, that they ignore every piece of boring, unsexy advice about diversification and index funds and long-term investing. This is what I mean by story-driven investing. It's not really about the stock. It's about the narrative. It's about feeling smart and in control and special. And when that story falls apart, when the stock tanks or the crypto crashes, it's not just a financial loss. It's an identity crisis. Because you weren't just investing money, you were investing your ego. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Smart people are used to being rewarded for their intelligence. You study hard, you get good grades. You work hard, you get promotions. There's a clear connection between effort and outcome. But money doesn't work that way. You can do everything right and still lose money in a recession. You can make all the safe, boring choices and watch your neighbor get rich off some risky bet. And that randomness, that lack of control, it drives intelligent people crazy. So they create false patterns. They convince themselves there's a system, a strategy, a way to beat the odds. Because accepting that luck plays a role feels like admitting they're not as in control as they thought. Let me give you a real example. I knew a software engineer, brilliant guy, making close to $200,000 a year. He was obsessed with optimizing everything. He'd spend hours researching the best credit card rewards, the best high-yield savings accounts, the best tax strategies. And all of that is fine, right? That's smart. But here's the problem. While he was optimizing for an extra 0.5% on his savings account, he was sitting on $70,000 in student loans at 6% interest. He wasn't paying them down because, in his mind, he might need that cash for an investment opportunity. He might find something with better returns. He was so focused on winning, on making the smartest possible move, that he completely missed the obvious one right in front of him: pay off the debt. It's a guaranteed 6% return. But that felt too simple, too boring. It didn't match the story he had in his head about being a savvy investor. This happens more than you think. Smart people overcomplicate things because simple solutions feel beneath them. They want the advanced strategy. They want the hack. They want to feel like they're playing the game at a higher level. And the financial industry absolutely loves this. They love selling complexity. They love making you feel like you need their proprietary algorithm or their exclusive fund or their insider knowledge. Because the truth, the boring truth that nobody wants to hear, is that most people would be fine with the basics. Spend less than you earn. Build an emergency fund. Invest in low-cost index funds. Pay off high-interest debt. That's it. That's the whole game for most people. But it doesn't feel special. It doesn't feel smart. And then there's ego. Oh man, ego is a killer. Because when you're successful in one area of life, you start to believe you should be successful in all areas. And when you're not, when your finances are a mess, or you made a bad investment, or you're living paycheck to paycheck despite a great salary, you feel shame, deep, suffocating shame. And instead of dealing with it, instead of asking for help, or admitting you don't know what you're doing, you hide it. You fake it. You keep up appearances. You buy the nice car because that's what someone at your level is supposed to drive. You live in the expensive neighborhood because that's where people like you live. And all the while, you're drowning. But you can't let anyone see that, because smart people aren't supposed to struggle with money. I think this is why so many high-income professionals have zero savings. They've trapped themselves in a lifestyle that matches their image, but not their actual financial reality. And the scariest part, they know it. They know they're one emergency away from disaster. They know they should be saving more, investing more, planning for the future. But the gap between where they are and where they think they should be feels so huge, so overwhelming, that they just freeze. They do nothing, because doing nothing feels safer than confronting the truth. So what changes? How do you break out of this? Honestly, it starts with letting go of the idea that you should already know this stuff. You shouldn't. Nobody taught you. Personal finance isn't taught in medical school or law school or engineering programs. You weren't supposed to figure this out on your own. And the fact that you're smart in other areas doesn't mean you're automatically supposed to be smart about money. Those are different skills, different emotional muscles, and it's okay to be a beginner at something. The turning point for most people comes when they stop trying to beat the system and start trying to understand themselves. When they realize the problem isn't the market or the economy or bad luck. The problem is the story they've been telling themselves. The story that says they need to impress people. The story that says they should take risks to prove they're bold. The story that says asking for help is weakness. Once you see those stories for what they are, just stories, not truth, you can start making different choices. And here's the thing about money. It's not actually about money. It's about freedom. It's about not lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering how you're going to pay for your kids' braces. It's about being able to say no to a job that's killing you. It's about having options. And all the smart investment strategies in the world don't matter if you don't have a foundation, if you're not covering the basics, if you're not living below your means and building that cushion that lets you breathe. So what does this look like practically? It means starting simple. It means automating the boring stuff so you don't have to rely on willpower or motivation. Set up automatic transfers to savings. Set up automatic investments. Make it so the smart choice is the easy choice. It means being honest about what you actually need versus what you think you need to maintain an image. Do you really need the new car, or are you trying to signal success? Do you really need the bigger house, or are you competing with people who probably can't afford theirs either? And it means asking for help when you need it. Hire a financial planner if that's what it takes. Read a book. Watch videos from people who actually know what they're talking about, not the ones promising to make you rich quick. Educate yourself, but with humility, not ego. The other thing, and this is huge, is giving yourself permission to make mistakes without letting them destroy you. You're going to mess up. You're going to make a bad investment or spend money on something dumb or miss an opportunity. That's part of learning. But smart people, they beat themselves up over mistakes. They spiral, They think one wrong move means they're failures. And that's just not true. Progress isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's about making slightly better choices more consistently over time. Look, I get it. If you're someone who's built your whole identity around being smart, around being competent, it's terrifying to admit you've been screwing up something this important. But here's what I've learned. The smartest financial decision you can make is recognizing that intelligence alone isn't enough, that you need systems, that you need self-awareness, that you need to separate your ego from your money. Because once you do that, once you stop trying to prove something and start trying to build something, everything gets easier. You don't need to be a genius to be good with money. You just need to be honest. Honest about where you are. Honest about what you want. Honest about what's been holding you back. And then you need to take one small step, not a giant leap, not some dramatic overhaul, just one thing. Pay off one debt, open one investment account, save 1 month of expenses, and then another, and another. That's how this works. Not through brilliance, through consistency. So if you're sitting here thinking you should have figured this out by now, that you're too smart to be struggling with money, I want you to let that go. You're not alone. Some of the most successful people I know are terrible with money, and some of the most financially stable people I know aren't geniuses. They just learned to get out of their own way. They learned that being smart about money isn't about complexity or performance or impressing anyone. It's about peace. It's about building a life where money is a tool, not a source of anxiety. And you can have that, you really can. You just have to be willing to start where you are, not where you think you should be. And that's enough. That's more than enough.